Welcome to The Grant, the EU funding podcast. The Grant. My name is Niels Tudor Winter, and I am the creator, editor, and host of The Grant. The Grant is an independent, non-commercial podcast initiative with the ambition to dig into all corners of the EU R&D funding system on topics of interest for the full EU R&D funding community. One of the key concerns for all proposal writers is the evaluation of their proposals, or more, how they will be evaluated. Whenever I've been asking guests for requests on who they would like to be on the grant, most of them have replied, "An evaluator, please." Well, this week I have a treat for you all. I have not only one, but 3 evaluators in the virtual podcast studio to solidly reply to your requests out there. In this monster panel, I have gathered CEO Alessia Melasecche Germini from Meta Group, Research and Grants Officer Daniela Angione from Innopharma Technology, and Managing Director Yoram Bar-Zeev from Enspire Science. The focus is on Horizon Europe Pillar 2 proposals, which all 3 guests have years of evaluation experience in. As you can imagine, it became a long recording, so I have divided it into 2 episodes. Last week we covered the evaluation process, the rules and regulation that evaluators they have to follow, and finally how to evaluate a complex Horizon Europe proposal. In this second half, we move into the difference between Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe proposals, the challenges as evaluator, how to become an evaluator, and finally the selection of evaluators. The last one, in some people's eyes, a controversial element. Please enjoy. The Grant. All those project officers nervous. All those clerks. So, you clerks in the little box offices there.
Yes.
In Belmont. A question, because many people are interested in what you just shortly touched here. Difference between Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe evaluation. Alessia, one of the reasons why I persistently put a hook on you for this episode, for this recording, is you have done both Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe. So can you mention just a few of the most important differences in from the evaluator's point of view between the 2 programs?
The individual evaluation report that we have to fill in, which is the same one for all the evaluators, so it's a structured one within the portal of the Commission, actually, of course, somehow reflects which are the novelties from one program to another, of course. So we are, of course, somehow guided in the evaluation. But clearly there are, important differences in between H2020 and Horizon Europe. On the different parts, on the different criteria. There is one general thing that I would like to highlight, which is usually I see that happens, is that there are clear maximum number of pages for the proposals to cope with, and in terms of the submission. And what happens is that, and this should be clear to everybody, that if you go beyond the maximum number of pages, which is established for the specific type of call, which usually now it's 45, but there are different, it depends really on the funding scheme, but let's say in a general level, if it's 45, if you have something on page 46, this won't be shown and considered for the evaluation. So whatever you propose, beyond the last page, which is allowed by the Commission, won't be considered for the evaluation. So this needs to be very, very clear, because unfortunately I had to evaluate several proposals which of course didn't pass the threshold because they had all the last tables beyond the 45th page. And therefore this is just, time, effort, resources, lost from the applicant side. So this needs to be really, And this is something which is always told to the evaluators before starting to evaluate, not to consider
that's a traditional one. But now, is it now simply erased?
Number of pages.
You can't see that. No, that's yeah. But the question whether you can see that.
I think they're not eligible. They're not eligible, aren't they?
No. It happened. Yeah, no. Yeah. In the calls that I evaluated, actually, the proposals were eligible. I mean, considered eligible, but we were requested. We were informed that there were pages beyond the maximum allowed, and in some cases they were blank, completely blank. So at one point, the content was stopping with a sentence up in the air, and in another case, actually, they were really, it was written not to. It was still there, the content, but there was in the background written.
Doesn't the system? I remember the system having blocked me automatically, saying you're exceeding the page, so I couldn't even submit. That's right.
It's been in some of the schemes, but there are schemes where you can't.
I can tell you that
that because of all kinds of structural things. So they simply they count the pages afterwards in the system, and as Alessia said in the past, it was kind of a red ribbon over there with a text to ignore. But I understand that now it's going simply to be blanked. So.
Other things, I know Impact has the content side. There's a difference, no?
Yes, in terms of the impact, of course, there is I would say, a greater importance attributed to the impact, to its credibility, likelihood of actually happening, and the scale and significance of it, and those are elements which, to be honest, I see still not very clear to the applicants. Measures to maximize impact as well. You are requested to introduce very specific details in terms of key exploitable results, in terms of how you're going to exploit, to disseminate. You are obliged to have an exploitation plan somehow drafted with this pathway to impact part. And moreover, as well in the structure, which goes more to the implementation part, you need to provide then this exploitation plan at month 6, so you need to be ready to have it up and running. There is as well a lot of importance around addressing early adopters, so to involve early adopters and users as well already in this part of the proposal. So in the past it was more, you were requested more to produce a generic PDR, which is plan for exploitation, dissemination of results. Now it's more dissemination plan, exploitation plan, structured, a process, and everything needs to be really, really credible. Another important element is that the Commission introduced the concept of the outcome in between the output, which is the key exploitable results, or the results, and the impact. So it's something in between which, in theory, should help as well somehow to guide and facilitate as well the writing of the process. You have all your research and scientific part happening, and then you produce output, which produce first level of outcome, and then on the outcomes in longer terms, you are going to achieve an impact. So it's like a step in between the achieving of the output and the achieving of the impact. But to be honest, this is very often misunderstood. And I have to say, even within the commission, they are
I
not
think
so
there was a
clear,
lot of work,
even
of course,
among
behind
themselves, on
the
what
changes
they
of
would like to
Horizon
have
Europe.
for that,
This,
to
exactly
be
this
honest.
part, I'm not sure. My honest opinion is I'm not sure that they have thought thoroughly through what would happen to the whole beneficiary community throughout Europe, having to translate or perceive what is meant by these new. There was a concept of each word, right? Outcome. When everybody was grasping. I remember it because I was still doing this grants consultancy when it came. And we were, like P&O 400 people, not everybody doing the writing, but it all concept, how on earth do you attack this? How do like everybody was grasping. So what we also thought, we were already reflecting, what about the evaluators? So you can, how's that? Like that.
Yeah, this is a kind of a gap that I've seen many times with the European Commission. That on one hand, in theory, they have very nice ideas of how to implement these, but they when take it into practice, you see that it's may not really work according to plans. I've seen it in so many dimensions with them, and yes, we need to struggle with that from both ends, from developing the proposals on one hand and the evaluators as well.
At their defense, you can say they do actually quite a big work in taking feedback. Yeah, you have it's even though it's a very big system and the big feedback. What are they called? They just had one earlier this year, right? The big feedback on all framework programs. Yeah, they really. It's something that they put a lot of effort in to get. So, what does the communities, the beneficiary communities, actually think of what we're doing in here?
Yes.
So it's, but it's sometimes you really do think that when public administration into this one, yeah.
Yeah, but they also ask for feedback even after each evaluation from the evaluators. So every time they we can express if there's something that we don't think is I don't know, appropriate, or there needs to be something some adjustment to be done from the European Commission point of view. That's something that we can suggest and recommend to the European Commission.
Sure. Yeah.
But can I say another big difference that I think is the elephant in the room here? I think, especially from people listening, is the lump sum.
The lump sum.
Yes.
The new lump sum, because I have evaluated the lump sum, and oh my God. So I think, and it's funny because I've heard from the European point of view, they introduced the lump sum because they want to reduce the burden of administrative process, and from the point of view of the proposers. But when then the difficulty comes when you actually have to structure, especially the implementation section, taking into account the lump sum, because with the lump sum you get paid only when you finish your activity or task within a work package. So if you, for example, especially in the case of the project management, right, work package usually is present into the implementation section. That the management work package goes from the first month until the end, right? 48 months, most very likely. With a lump sum, if you structure the implementation in that way, then you don't get paid for the activities that you do in the project management until the end of the project, if that's the structure, right? But at the same time, so that's one aspect of the lump sum. The other aspect, so from the proposer point of view, but from the evaluation point of view, we are asked to actually look at the cost. So we have to look at not only at how the lump sum, so the money, the budget is split between the members and the beneficiary of the consortium, but also for each of the consortium and for each of the member states, because each consortium can be in a specific member state. We have to assess the for example, the cost for the researchers, the cost if they've claimed for equipment. And if something is not right, and if we make recommendations, and we have to make a recommendation, we have to make a comment on that as well. With the lump sum, we have to make sure that the comment is objective. So if, for example, somebody has claimed a specific amount of money for a specific equipment, we have to check and make sure that that is the right amount of money, something that before we weren't asked to do. We weren't asked to go into these details. Or sometimes, for example, they put some cost for a salary for a researcher that in a specific member state, we have to assess that that's the right amount of money for a salary. And we have to make sure that, there is the spread between junior researcher and senior researcher in the specific, beneficiary. So that's another level of complexity from the evaluation point of view, but also from the writing the proposal point of view, right? Because you can't just claim, oh, well, I want this amount of money and I'm going to pay myself, like that amount of money. But then it gets more complicated, because what I found in the last evaluation is that, for a higher education institution, you can find out, the average cost, for example, for an experienced researcher or a junior researcher. But what happens when you have a company, and the company, can pay their employees in their own, way, right? So how do you assess that? And so that's something that it came up as an issue, when we were evaluating. And but this is a new thing that has been introduced, and I think the European Commission is also looking to optimize this from the evaluation point of view. So what we have to comment, and also from the the proposer point of view.
If I may add on the lump sum, just because exactly what Daniela said in terms of you need to complete activities to be paid, it was what actually brought several applicants to completely, approach in a wrong way that part last time that I was evaluating. But actually what I would like to clarify then from the experience on being on the other side. I'm currently implementing a couple of projects which include lump sum, and actually what is said is true, but actually the Commission gives a very high pre-financing, and therefore actually the money it's then transferred by the Commission at the beginning as usual, and therefore you can implement your action. So there is this somehow discrepancy as well, and this is misleading in interpreting, when you write the proposal, that you think how to have, partial activities completed, thinking that you're not going to be paid until all the activities completed. Yeah. But actually, in reality, what happens is you get the pre-financing, and therefore you already get the money, to pay the activities. But how to evaluate lump sum actually was the reason why 3 different proposals had to be re-evaluated last time that I was evaluating, because among the different
I guess this is an example of making things easier, trying to make things easier and making it easier for the beneficiaries from the Commission, but then it ends up being complicated.
Yes, there is kind of an inherent complexity here, which I agree with what Alessia said about the pre-financing, but also the issue of the reporting period. It also plays a role in this then. And when you plan, when you apply and prepare application, you don't know already how are going to be the what is going to be the scheme of the reporting periods. And if you want to plan accordingly, because this is a key factor in the way of them or of approving payments for completed work packages, this is kind of an invisible factor in the preparation phase. But I can tell you out of experience that we are currently coordinating 2 lump sum projects already. That apparently they have a lot of flexibility afterwards in adjusting things and aligning that to make sure that the actual implementation will be flawless.
Yeah,
there are also good news here. And as far as I remember, we have a separate session just for lump sum, I believe, right, Niels?
Oh, I didn't know. Sorry.
That's a point, as I've been actually looking for a while for someone to come into my virtual
Okay.
podcast studio to dig into this, and Yoram has offered. We have made we can congratulate ourselves, Yoram and me, because we made an agreement. It's my first contract for some content, branded content, where Yoram he has put his hand on the cooking plate to work together with the grant. So in that 3 episode series, one of the episodes will be on the lump sum. So I'm very happy to be doing that together with Yoram.
There is another difference. Can I say?
Yes.
That they are trying to introduce. Well, they tried. At least I was. I had the experience to evaluate under a blind revision, but blind evaluation. At least for a 2-stage proposal, the first stage was blind, so we didn't, as evaluators, we didn't know who are the person proposing. So even when you write, a proposal, knowing that there is a blind evaluation, there's some rules that you have to follow. Otherwise, if you don't follow those rules, you are not eligible for being evaluated. Sorry. I thought that was a very interesting experience, and I really, really appreciated that from the evaluator point of view, and I think they should do it more often. That's what I said.
You're actually touching upon a sour toe here, right? Because naturally, this is what you know when you prepare a proposal.
Yeah.
That the consortium that you put together, for Christ's sake, you need those flagship partners, because you know that is what the word is among consultants, not only in the company I worked in, but in general. You need to have those leading organizations within a specific field of reading research, or leading companies within a specific, to be like crawling up the ladder of point giving, to affect the evaluator to say, they are on board, because that's exactly that, to say, they are on board. So that's already a positive aura around
Exactly.
the work that you're handing in. So yeah, I appreciate that they have started doing this. Because of course, when you were doing proposals where you could not get those flagships in, and you were still doing a credible job, right? You were still doing a solid, developing a solid approach, solid idea, and so on. But you knew just in the back of your head.
Yeah. Well, it's of course we are trying to be objectives and not influenced by bias, by knowing that there is we are human beings, and when you don't know, you don't know. I've heard people, evaluators, saying that they were against the blind evaluation process because they were not confident about the ability of the consortium to deliver, because you could be a very good writer and put together a very good proposal, but then if you don't know who is writing, then you don't know if they're going to deliver what they're saying they're going to deliver. I disagree with that. I think if you know what you're doing, it's evident from the proposal and how you write it, and it doesn't have to be, I don't have to know who is behind writing the proposal.
I agree, and this is a concept. I think that is kind of something horizontal of reviewers actually reading through the text. Meaning, there are people that think that they need to, well polish their text and maybe use some kind of marketing slogans and take it to the American style, etc., etc. But a good evaluator is actually going to read through all that into the essence.
Yeah.
And therefore, I really favor good text flow and good English in the proposals. But if you don't have it, it doesn't matter. I will read through that.
Yeah,
exactly. You're professionals. You know what you're doing. You know what it's you not speak on behalf of all evaluators, because that's also part of what we're talking about here. You have some different levels of also knowledge and so on, but principle, it's people that know their stuff and know their area. That's why they have come through. The commission has accepted them. So been talking about it, but now the challenges as you as an evaluator that you face And we have been touching upon them. We touched upon one sub-bullet here is the coordination between you. So we talked about the clashes and the disagreements. Maybe we don't need to talk about that. But what I did want, and that was what I flagged in the beginning of this conversation, the time content, time resource paradox, right? So how you are dealing with this as a professional that wants to deliver and honor, so to say, respect the work that has been done, because you are all proposal preparers, and most people who do this as an evaluator, they know how resource intensive and difficult a task it is to put together a competitive proposal. But that is over such a long period, and then evaluators are asked in a very brief, if you have a sand corner and then you have a sandbox, right? So, so you have to deal with a very short time, deal with something that has a lot of work behind it. So how do you manage that? And maybe I start with you, Yoram. Is it just do you park it or just look at it respectful? Is it something that you're aware of when you sit with it?
Oh yes, definitely. I take the time. I invest the time. I never cut corners in that respect. I definitely put all the efforts needed into the process, even if it's going to take me longer than planned or allocated. There was a case in the past which I actually rejected, although I accepted some tasks. At some point, I saw that I cannot handle them within the time frame, so I rejected them back to the system. And some of them, by the way, came back later on, but it's simply I kind of bought more time for the process. But this is kind of a trick of working with the system. But in no way I would try to do something quick and dirty and submit it.
Mm-hmm.
I will invest the time in order to properly read, understand what I'm reading, and provide the professional feedback to that. Not just because I'm respecting the efforts, that goes without saying, just because personally I love doing that. I love reading proposals, I love reading, evaluating these, and I want to believe that my feedback is beneficial to the other side. So this is something which motivates me on my daily work, and of course in these evaluation tasks as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm taking the time and putting that. I can say that experience is of course helping here, because I read faster than ever before. I get to the point faster. It's the most demanding task in this process, in my eyes, is actually articulating the feedback. What exactly do I need to write down within the character limits or the word limit that will effectively reflect the feedback? So peer experience also gets into play, so it's easier than before, of course. And in that sense, I may be more efficient, but still, I allocate all the time needed for the process.
So let's just when we make onto this point, just touch upon the challenges that each of you have. So this issue with summing up, because everybody who's been reading an evaluation summary report is quite short compared to you have documents that are 30, 40, sometimes 90, 100 pages. I can understand that to sum up an issue for such a large document or an impact section that is 10 pages long, sum up that I can follow. Is there anything else?
In terms of challenges?
When you think, yes, the challenges and evaluators. So here we have the time. Okay, so you learned, so you trained yourself to do so. And then the summing up, is there anything else where I think that's sometimes an issue?
Yes, I can think of, I'm just out of my personal memory. There were cases where it was a very clear negative feedback, meaning a proposal which is completely off.
Mm-hmm.
And then still, as an evaluator, I had to go and fill in all the answers to all the questions and address all these minor points. And what for? It's completely off. It's not in the right direction. And this is kind of a challenge. It's like it's not fun.
But that's how it is with such a system, right? Everything has to be treated at the same by the same standards. Alessia.
Exactly. Yes. But it's more or less the same. I mean, it took me in some cases more than I was supposed to dedicate to a single proposal. It's, through the years I'm more efficient. I know, by heart the report that I need to fill in, and therefore to look for the information or to understand if the different elements are addressed in the proper way. It's easier, definitely, but still this depends much on how the proposal is written, because even if I can be more efficient, then information can be somehow hidden, or not exactly where you think to find them. And I usually work as well with keywords. As I said, I work offline on papers, but with the proposal open on the laptop. And when I cannot, I read and I cannot really see, I try with keywords, synonyms and things to see if there are points in which the element that I'm looking for is there. As you said, being a proposal writer and implementer at the same time, and then an evaluator, I know very well, what it means to prepare and submit a proposal. And I totally agree with Yoram. There are cases in which from, the first page you read, you understand, moreover, starting, reading the excellence, that they are completely, out of scope, but you do not declare that this is out of scope because you do not want to be the one saying that this is 100% out of scope. And therefore, you need to, fill in all the report, addressing all the elements and everything, because any case, what you are reporting should be somehow comparable with the others and should then go in the consensus report. And therefore, elements coming and evaluation coming from the 3, 4, 5 different evaluator should be, put together in the same report and should be agreed. Whatever you think about the proposal, and even if you think that in that case you could have perhaps, invested your time in a better, different way, I would say. I think that, for the closing of this, then later,
we are going to touch upon it in a second.
Share how we became evaluators.
Thanks. Daniela.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I
think
would
I can
would like, to join the
fully
team.
relate to what has been said already, especially with, by both Yoram and Alessia. I think a challenge that happens, well, for me, not only when a proposal is clearly a bad proposal from the beginning, as Yoram said, that you have to go through the process and you have to justify why it's bad and go to all super criteria. But even when a proposal is clearly very good, you have to do the same thing. Sometimes you know exactly that this proposal has to be funded because it's excellent, but still you have to justify and make sure that you're going through all the process. But another challenge that I actually faced recently, and I think is something new that has been introduced with Horizon Europe, which is the artificial intelligence. So we have to address the robustness of the artificial intelligence, and what the problem that I have with that is that since it's become artificial intelligence and a horizontal, kind of expectation across different topics, across different, calls. Everybody puts all the proposal, they put artificial intelligence in or machine learning inside the proposal. And some of them, they clearly know what you're doing. Some others, they're kind of chancing it. But from the evaluation point of view, it also a challenge in the sense that not all the experts are experts in artificial intelligence. And we have to really assess the robustness of a methodology for the artificial intelligence. And sometimes you have to well, you have to kind of use a bit of intuition, kind of assess it, even if you are not exactly expert. So how usually in between expert, when they are selected, they try to put expert that they have more expertise in artificial intelligence or machine learning, whatever it is, but not always is the case. So I found that there was more disagreement around that sub criteria. That was a bit of a challenge sometimes, and so as a for example, in my case, so there is different levels of robustness that you can assess for artificial intelligence. You can assess the approach. You can assess the robustness of the algorithm. You can go as deep as you want, in the artificial intelligence. And so that's a bit of a tricky aspect. And then the challenge is always, well, sometimes what I found challenging in the past was that when you have more than three, there's some evaluators that they are quite harsh on the score, and sometimes the score is too low and it doesn't really reflect then the comments. And then of course you are in these consensus meetings, and then and the score is not kind of aligned with the other expert, but then they change their mind, and so it's always the fact, you have to try to keep a balance there when you submit a report. And sometimes when it doesn't happen, then it's just during the meetings, then it requires more time to understand why the score was so low. Are we missing something? Are you missing something? So I think just trying to be objective is the really challenge sometimes.
Alessia, you had your.
Yes, because there is another point which last time that I evaluated was creating problems, which is something a bit different now, connected to the application of gender equality principles in the implementation plan. Because this is interpreted in very different ways, as gender dimension, as gender balance, as gender equality plan. And this causes problems in terms of the applicants on one side, and in terms of the evaluation as well, because these gender equality principles, as well as the artificial intelligence, actually they may they may bring the evaluators to decrease the scoring of something like half a point or even more. So they are really, even if they're assessed, individually, each one of those, but they really can affect the overall evaluation. And to be honest, there is a lot of confusion on that, on how to approach
I actually
that,
had
and how to
a
explain
thematic
and how
episode
to evaluate
because I
as
have
well,
in my
because there are
network
really
a guy that is
different
running a
ways of
podcast on diversity and
approaching this.
The two guys, and this is something that like the main square root outcome of the episode. So the conclusion was that the commission is always they're often a step forward, or they take a torch and then they carry, and then everybody struggles to find out, and then 5 years later everybody is on the same page. But when it happens in the beginning, it's everybody looks back, okay, that was the right step to take, but everybody is fumbling. And especially something that's also quite, some people think it's controversial to deal with these kind of things in a research project, right? So you would probably have evaluators thinking, why do I have to deal with this? So they're already biased in a negative way about, it has nothing to do with this, right? So it's, and also the beneficiaries approaching have also sometimes, like, leave me in peace. But it's, but it indeed, I can see that it's why it is indeed a challenge, and can be a challenge also at a consensus meeting. I can very, very clearly see that. Now I have all of you guys, ladies. It's an American thing, I guess. you have the advantage that you are writing proposals yourself, right? So in your evaluation, let me just assume, I guess you know where you shortcut, or where you sometimes when you write a proposal under time pressure, then you cut some corners or you do something. I guess you know that you use that knowledge in your evaluation, don't you? Huh?
Yes, actually, I can say that yes, to some extent. There is a theme that we are constantly using. There is also an article that we are publishing about that on our knowledge base, which we label feeding the reviewer, meaning how to actually convey the right messages, the right place, of course, in the specific context, etc., because it's a very important theme to feed the reviewers, make the life of the reviewer easier, and something which it's in your
it's like applying for a job,
exactly.
Right? Another thing that has been in earlier episodes of the grant, I know because people have been listening to this earlier, regulars anyways. Evaluators that I had on board, not talking about evaluation, but it was on how to prepare proposals, mentioned that the first 2 pages could make or break any proposal for them. Do you agree to that? So having that it's so difficult for human beings to change a negative perception if the seeds has been sown in the brain. So when reading through the rest, do you? And now I'm asking you now. Now we're going into psychology here. Do you consciously work? Are you aware of the, so to say, so you sit with that responsibility? Are you aware of in your evaluation? Say, okay, that was crap. That was two hard pages to get through. But let me work consciously with that feeling. Try to push it down, and then read with an open mind how they are folding this out in this work that they have done. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Yes.
Yes. Moreover, because the first 2 pages usually are related to excellence, which is one of the 3 criteria. So it's clear that if the first 2 pages, which are usually setting the ground for, whatever will be presented then, are not good enough, this leaves you a bit of, bitter feeling. But it's as well true that this is the first reading, and then you need to assess specific, elements, sub-criteria, and so on and so forth, which then you need, really to check properly every single point and every single element.
No, so I agree. I mean, in the sense that, of course, as we said before, when you go to the proposal and you screen it very briefly, you know already if it's a good or a bad proposal. But as Yoram said at the beginning, you always sit down and evaluate a proposal with a positive attitude. So even when a proposal, the first 2 pages, you read it and you are kind of struggling a bit, there's always, at least in my case, I always go and say, like, no, I have to find, I have to go through this. I have to go. Maybe if my first read is not the best one, maybe I was not in the right mood. Maybe I was tired. I was too tired. So I have to go through again and make sure that really I am not getting it. No, there's always a very strong responsibility from when we're doing it. So I don't agree. I mean, if the excellence is great, then you're ready. You're going to be evaluated well on that point. But it doesn't mean that it happened to me that the excellence we scored in the first section 5, and then the implementation was very low. Unfortunately, you have to keep the consistency even through the proposal, because we have to evaluate all the sections. So no, I don't agree with the fact that if you do a very good job on the first 2 pages, you're done. No. You have to go through all of it. At least that's my experience.
I think what that guest mentioned was that you want to see through. So of course, if it's really crappy, the work plan, right? If then of course, but if it's balancing, we say maybe then she had herself in occasions. It's they're gonna be okay, and then rating it is because you understand the balance where the mind says, okay, if it had a bad excellence section, bad first 2 pages, then it's easier to look at the work print again. Look, no, off you go. But if everything is fine, and then you come to that and say, oh, okay, which is absolutely normal human psychological reaction when you sit with such a thing. We need to talk about how you, because this is what I said in the beginning. I waited with this to the end when we've been running through all these tips. So to look into how did you become, what motivated you, my dear guest, to become an evaluator? Because this is, of course, important to. So, what motivated you, Alessia?
Actually, I was writing proposals, and I thought that it would be honestly, nice to know what was happening on the other side. And actually, at the time, I decided to attend a course organized by the National Contact Point here. This was why I wanted to share the story, because actually this was, pretty simple story. But I attended a course in which, there was an evaluator there presenting, which was actually the work of an evaluator, and how to, present yourself in the best way possible when registering yourself as an expert in the funding and tender portal, which were crucial elements to be considered, and so on and so forth. Then, of course, I knew that this was, an evaluation made, I would say, on papers by the commission, because it's keywords, it's titles, it's experience, it's a lot of things. So you need, of course, to present it in the best way possible. And actually, I registered, and a year later, I was called in for the first time. So I want as well to share that I was called in not knowing the people that were calling me in for the evaluation. And this happened for the first time, and then I was involved in topics later on, even different topics throughout the years, not knowing the people that were again inviting me to be an evaluator. What is, I think, important, this was suggested at the time, and I think this is still relevant, is to update, of course, the profile time to time with the experience, publications, if there are new certifications, topics which could be covered, as well aligning a bit with the keywords of the current, programs and work plans, of course.
Yeah. Sorry, Daniela. Why did you become an evaluator?
I think from the same, very similar approach, same reason that Alessia just mentioned. So I was writing proposal. I love writing proposals, and I used to do it all the time. Well, I still do it actually. That's my job, part of my job. But I wanted to understand the essence, really. Maybe go on the other side and understand a bit more, because I thought would be an advantage, right?
Sure.
From the writing a proposal point of view. But I did it. I followed the process. So I registered on the portal as an expert, and I put my expertise. But it didn't happen straight away, because I think what the European Commission sees is also the level of experience, and how you gain your experience in your field. Of application. So I think it happened after 2 years that I registered, and I updated, as Alessia said, all the time. And then I was invited on one specific call. I think was the first one was the equivalent of the current Pathfinder, which is the FET Open, the FET Open, and then and then changed completely. So from the FET Open, I went to something else, the Excel, and and again, new program, a new scheme. But it happens. I think the European Commission look at the profile, and that's really what happened to me. And I remember because when you do write something. I was writing, I remember at the beginning of my career, Marie Curie, write proposal, and then I went through the ERC, so I know exactly Yoram, and I went through all these websites, years ago when I wrote my ERC, and found a lot of interesting article about it. But what I'm trying to say is that when you write such a challenging, proposal, and they're so big and they're so overwhelming, then you kind of you want to understand a bit more. So that was the motivation for me.
Yeah. Yoram.
Well, for me, it's a similar story. Again, starting talking about 20 years ago. So I have only minimal recollections, but I do remember that I was preparing a proposal, submitting, getting results, etc. But there was a mystery. What is happening on the other side?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that it caught me by surprise in an NCP event that I can actually apply to be an evaluator. And it rolled from there on, meaning I applied, I put my CV. It took time, I think 3, 4, 5 years until they first contacted me. But that was pretty much it. My motivation was to kind of demystify this process and to better understand what's going on the other side. And it was actually a very educating experience. And I always recommend everyone that I'm working with, if they can and if they have the interest, simply to register and wait for the European Commission to call them in.
Yeah. And probably you all became better proposal preparers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because that's the more you see, and the more you see, oh, that's clever. Or that's a good approach. That's a nice way of structuring a text. Or that's, God, they really nailed it. You take color of that, right?
There is another thing. It's the matter of weights, meaning what is more important. And there are so many urban myths out there.
Yeah.
And it helps you to face them and put the right weight in the right place.
Yeah.
It's also why people have requesting such an episode in the grant. It's everybody talks about what is being weighed, how are they, why are they doing this? Why did they do this? Also because we've all experienced, you also experienced yourself to receive an evaluation summary report was it, what the, but I remember one where they had singled out some way that I had described the communication table or something like that. What? I mean, no, that's simply, that's not fair. I mean, this is a document of back then it was, I think, 90 pages. That's not, come on. And then giving a lower grade because So we've all been angry. We've all been wanting, I'm going to sue their ass. But not going to happen. No, thanks. Last element here, and this is something that you actually requested in our pre-meeting, the selection of evaluators, because this is something, and now I have made the bridge myself, now actually without being conscious about it, the criticism about what you get back, how evaluators being selected. It's something that is continuously going on, especially in the grants consultancy world, also in the research teams in project offices and universities and so on. There's a lot of criticism around that, who is actually evaluating. Also, maybe sometimes also justified, where you realize that some evaluators, they don't have the needed knowledge, or people feel that it was not being evaluated with the respect of knowing what you're actually doing in the content area. Do you comment on that?
Silent.
But is it something where because you know as well yourself, right? It's
I think that maybe we should dedicate a session to that, because
I think
it's not a point. It's a full range of issues, but definitely there are. I think I really like the system. I think it's a very good system, but it has its flaws, and part of it has to do with the selection of the reviewers. I've seen so many cases where the feedback was either not professional enough, or simply didn't understand the material, or to the extent of, I remember a case where we applied to something which was coming from, it was in the medical domain, and the feedback, once we got the feedback, the leading researcher looked at the ESR and said, the person who wrote the feedback never went to medical school. It's clear that he didn't go through medical school, because what he wrote here is simply nonsense. So we have so many issues around that. It happens, but it's not the majority of cases. That's the important thing to remember. This happens in actually only a low percentage of cases where we see these issues of non-professional feedback or selection of evaluators. But
this is the feeling you get, right? That sometimes and I put it here as a bullet, right? Or that's more like a reflection. There's a problem in that you cannot have a system of such a size without running into this. It's simply not possible.
Right.
And knowing, I've been an NCP myself. It's been a while, but I've been an NCP myself, and I know how much the commission already back then struggled to get evaluators of the quality needed to evaluate the amount of proposals coming from the commission. Sometimes there's also a strategy behind some calls when they have like two-stage calls. There's a strategy behind that, because this is a matter of not only administrating what's coming through, but it's also a matter of how many evaluators get, because they sit with the full picture, the commission, right? They have the full overview of how many evaluators do we need for the whole system we build up. Naturally, Daniela.
If I may add, Niels, there's also the issue where when there are new topics, not topics, new
instruments,
new instrument, but also new concept, policy published all the time by European Commission. New paradigms, and sometimes experts are just lacking in that specific niche or application or topic or concept. Is not something that you do I don't know, motivated by superficiality or I don't know. It's still not there. So it needs maybe a bit of more time before you can get to the level of the number of the evaluators needed for that specific with the knowledge needed for that specific concept.
And this is because this is a political system, so there's a back curtain of where it all comes from, right? So there's a push of where these things need to go. So the one thing is that the commission gets input to the areas of where do we need to guide research and innovation funding, right? So you have a push. They made all kinds of frameworks or structures of getting input on where things are going. But then the commission has its own ideas of what needs to be pushed and concepts that needs to be forwarded, right? And
I think it's a completely new podcast that has to be done around this.
It is. And I think maybe we should just agree in this group that this is something that we're going to make a dedicated episode around.
Yeah.
We're going to roast the system.
I would love to have a European Commission representative on something like this, but they are notoriously. I haven't managed. I'm approaching 100 episodes without having a Commission representative on board. Well, I guess one day it's going to happen.
I can tell you that out of experience, at least I have some project officers in mind now that will happily contribute to such roasting, because they have a lot of internal criticism about what's going on there. Around these issues. So
well, Yoram, we'll talk about that. But if you can manage,
they will not come in.
No.
Unofficial, maybe, but
No,
Yeah.
they're
you will
gonna
not
come.
get
They
anything official.
Nope.
they won't come.
Nope,
No.
that's not going to. But they're listening. I can see it in my data. I can see that they're listening.
That's good.
Yeah. No, let's just move on to the end because it's Yoram. You have to go. You don't have to spend time with us anymore. The Grand. No, thank you so much. Now, I always have. We did cover it, but let's just. I have the toughest challenge that I have in all my programs. But we have going through the challenges as an evaluator. But what is the toughest one? What's the most, Yoram? What's the toughest one?
I think that one is. Okay, let's put it like that. I already attended before. I think that I will answer that in the following way. There are cases in the evaluation process which I simply want to have the ability to simply say yes or no without getting through the entire evaluation process. Because if it's a very good proposal, yes, go ahead and fund it and leave me alone. I don't want to go through the entire process of writing the feedback. And if it's a completely no, I would like to simply say no and release it as well. So that's my. It's not the toughest challenge, but let's say it's my. My
But it is a challenge that you have to.
largest wish of the process.
That's for the follow-up episode because that's about the system. Alessia.
I think that it's more related to dealing with the other experts in terms of, each one of us, of course, his her own view on the proposal, for sure biased by something, because I think that everybody is biased by something. And then to still be open-minded enough to be firm on principles that each one has, but flexible enough to understand others' point of view and then to agree, to come
Very
to consensus.
diplomatic.
So I think that this is more related to human beings. I would say.
Diplomatic. It's I guess it goes to some people's head that they are labeled as an expert. Daniela.
No, I completely agree with Alessia 100%. She described it very well. Is exactly that's the challenge. Dealing with the other expert, and again, when you have 5 of them, it's really hard. And knowing and seeing how some of them, they might have been maybe unconsciously biased, and maybe yourself as well, and you don't spot it, but you have to keep that flexibility to accept during the discussion, other point of view. I think that's really a challenge. Some of them, I've experienced myself. Some of them, they were really tough and just close to it, right? I was like, I'm not going to even want to discuss that. And that's when it becomes tricky, that you have to just, dig and try. And sometimes, sometimes it doesn't work.
Have you, now this is for all of you, being honest, have you, can you honestly say that you have not yourself been one of the tough evaluators, so to say, one of them that has been difficult to deal with, if you were standing on a point of view?
You might.
I had cases.
Actually, I think yes. The answer is yes. I mean, I can recall a couple of cases in which,
if you're sure you're
definitely.
right,
I think,
definitely.
Yeah.
So,
but then I found somebody meaner than me, so I felt.
On that note, well, I'm going to shut down the program now, and then before we're going to say goodbye to the list. So, dear listeners, I really hope you enjoyed this, because it took me a long time to reach to these fantastic couple of hours you've just been listening to. Thanks for listening to the end. So if you are a first timer, go to my website, thegrant.eu. There you'll find my whole back catalog. It's reaching, by this stage, we should be over 90 episodes. And there should definitely also be something for you under the horizon. The horizon segment that I have made in there. There's lots of content in there. So check it out. And while you are in there, you should, if you have any sympathy at all with what I'm doing here, you should subscribe to my email list. You will get an email when I release an episode. That's all. But that is the best way to support me as an independent podcast developer. So thank you in advance for that. And you'll find lots of other great stuff in there, but without mentioning that, because you realize that yourself, you should, as a second action, you should connect with me on LinkedIn if that has not already happened. This is where the fun happens. This is where I share. This is where I like Daniela's, Alessia's, and Yoram's great stuff that they post in there. And this is also where you'll find my releases if you're not submit. But you already subscribed to the email, so no, that's it. I always forget something, but I try to keep it as short as I can here in these outros. Alessia, Daniela, Yoram, thank you so much for joining me.
It was a pleasure, Niels.
Thank you.
And we will be staying in touch about a follow-up episode. So you can, that's the suspense for you guys out there, what will follow, when that will come. Now let's say goodbye to the dear listeners. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.